Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the GFFN Euro Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are Bleacher Report's lead football writer, Sam Tighe, and GFFN writers, Eric Devin and Philippe Bargil. The quarterfinals have been completed, but with just 3 games to go, everyone can see the Coupe Henri Deloney in sight. But before we take a look at the fabulous Final Four, here are the latest headlines. Portugal qualified for the semi-finals on Thursday after beating Poland on penalties. Robert Lewandowski opened the scoring in the first few minutes before Bayern Munich midfielder Renato Sanchez levelled things up before half-time. Fiorentina's Jakub Błaszczykowski missed the decisive penalty as Ronaldo and company march on, despite not having won a single game in regular time. They will face Wales after the home nation reached their first ever semi-final with a win over Belgium 3-1. Raja Nainggolan put Mark Wilmot's side in front before an Ashley Williams header made it 1-1 at half-time. A wonderful goal from Hal Robson-Kanu put Kush Coleman's men into the driving seat before Sam Vokes made certain of their place in the Final Four with a header 5 minutes from time. Germany overcame a stubborn Italy side for the first time in a major tournament as they won yet another penalty shootout. Mesut Ozil gave them the lead in the second half, only for a Leonardo Bonucci spot kick to send the game into extra time. After a few misses, it was Matteo Darmian's failed effort that meant Jonas Hector's successful attempt put Joachim Löw's side into the next round. Host France hit 5 past Iceland on Sunday after a double from Olivier Giroud. Paul Pogba, Dimitri Payet and Antoine Griezmann rounded off the scoring, while Kolbeinn Sigthorsson and Birkir Bjarnason grabbed consolations for Lars Lagerbäck's men. Les Bleus will now face Die Mannschaft for a place in the European Championship final. As for suspensions, William Carvalho will miss the semi-final for Portugal, while Ben Davies and Aaron Ramsey will be unavailable for Wales during that fixture. Mats Hummels has been suspended for the semi-final against France, while the hosts managed to get through without another player missing through 2 yellow cards. In terms of injuries, Germany will be without both Sami Khedira and Mario Gomez for the rest of the tournament, with the former nursing a thigh issue and the latter suffering a hamstring injury. And that is all for your news, but remember, to stay up to date, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN and at GFFN Euro 2016. We start with Les Bleus as they truly put Iceland to the sword on Sunday evening. Despite the plucky Scandinavians pulling 2 goals back, they were hit with 5 solid finishes that truly cemented France's place in this competition. Sam, was this finally a statement of intent from the hosts?
I think probably, yeah. I think if you score 5 goals in this tournament, which has been a little dry in front of goal, I think it's probably a statement. And yeah, it was only Iceland, but you look at the game pattern and the fact that Iceland, of course, raised their game so considerably for the other fixtures they've played, and the fact that Iceland are fundamentally very difficult to break down, or we thought they were perhaps. France did really well, and I think it probably is a statement. It is starting to come together. So Griezmann and Giroud being moved closer together as a strike partnership, much better. I'm much happier seeing that. I like to see Griezmann in the middle or in between the lines, and that's where he really did the damage to Iceland. And to be honest, that is an area that England, for example, just did not stress enough. They did not stress the area between the lines. I understand that Iceland shrink that space and make it very small, but Griezmann ran the show from between those 2 lines, and it was impressive to see France in full flow. Even Matuidi played well, who I think for the whole tournament has been so quiet, so disappointingly quiet.
Yeah, it was almost like they arose from the dead, it seemed, in that sort of game. And we've mentioned before on the podcast, Philip, that we felt that Griezmann was a better player in that central role. Do you think he really was the defining factor in that game to speeding up the tempo when France needed it?
Yeah, it's strange because we talked about England and Hodgson not really knowing his formation, and here we are. We play 4-2-3-1 second half against Ireland and play really well because we score 2 goals, don't concede any, and then against Iceland, Asano just knocked out England. We still keep playing this formation, which Deschamps has not used that often, but it suits Griezmann and it basically suits everyone. So the whole pre-match worries were basically pushed away when we opened the scoring after 12 minutes. Pogba hit a wonderful header, and then it was just a Griezmann show. Payet was played very well, and Pogba was so much better. Sam mentioned Matuidi, who probably had his best game of the tournament. I thought Pogba was very good as well. An extremely good game. And let's not forget Moussa Sissoko. We didn't really have any certainties if he would start or not, but he started and he played really well.
Eric, what really worked for the team in this one? What was the moment they really clicked together? I mean, this is the kind of formation up front, at least, that you were really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely certainly an all-out attacking philosophy from Deschamps. I mean, each of these players, despite Pogba and Matuidi being deployed as nominal central midfielders, we know from watching them enough that Pogba's gifts are better deputized going forward, and Matuidi likes to contribute as well, and usually he's the type of player who can run and get involved in an attack as a second or third runner, but he also showed a lovely range of passing, particularly on the goal for Giroud there, which still might have been offside, but I digress. It was really pleasant to see France playing this way. Although I will say the other side of that coin is that despite Deschamps going for an all-out attack, that Iceland didn't really seem to respond in that nature. I think that France could have been a little bit more effectively neutralized, particularly in central areas, if the two strikers had pressed in the front a little bit more. I think that whether it's a matter of being tired from Iceland or just a matter of being unwilling to deal with the pace of the likes of Griezmann and Payet, that they didn't really want to seem to create opportunities on the counter and really press from the front. I think that we saw Sigthorsson and Beer Davidson not be nearly as active as we had against England. They weren't constantly harrying France's front line. I think that made things a little bit too easy for France in the end.
Yeah, even given that 5-2 scoreline, the worry for the French, Sam, is that 2 they conceded. Will they be a little worried about potential issues in defence going forward against a team like Germany?
Yeah, I mean there are questions to answer in defence. I mean I don't know if Umtiti comes back in or comes in again, or if who Koscielny's partner will be. It's a difficult decision for Deschamps to make. I thought that Evra, Sagna, and Umtiti were all beaten at one moment or another against Iceland in dangerous areas. Obviously, there were 2 goals conceded. I'll be honest as well. I mean, the formation does seem to suit Matuidi and Pogba deeper in midfield in the 4-2-3-1 against weaker sides, but I wonder just how adept they will be in that system against a better team such as Germany. I mean, both Matuidi and Pogba players, surging number 8s for their clubs. Deschamps' 4-3-3 template has been quite consistent over the last few years, and they have both played those number 8 roles, and they've always had someone behind them to mop up and guard that space just in front of the defence. And whether that's Schneidlin or whether it's Lastiara or whether it's Johan Kabay, it has been someone who has been suited. Now, when you're playing against someone like Mesut Ozil, who is so good at taking advantage of any space that anyone leaves or dragging people out of position, I would be more concerned about Pogba and Matuidi rushing to the ball or opening holes for somebody else to use rather than the issues in defence.
Because they're not defense shielders, these two. I mean, they're very good players, but they first of all they never really play in that system at club level, and it's not like they're like some a player. I'm thinking about more of a Makelele type player who would just sit in front of the defense, which Conte did very well earlier in this tournament. So. I think it's a good point, and it needs to be addressed because this Icelandic very flat 4-4-2 is not the same proposition that Germany will be on Thursday evening. So what does Deschamps do? Does he put Conte back, because he's basically our only option for that kind of work?
Yeah, difficult, isn't it? I would put Conte back in. I genuinely would.
Instead of.
Yeah, that's
Oh, no, no. That's
I
the
would say
problem.
Matuidi. I would say Matuidi. I think out of the two, he was the less performing one, even though he had an alright game. But yeah, I would probably stick Conte in front of the defense and put Pogba as a box to box with Griezmann as second striker.
And that is what makes the problem, isn't it? Because Griezmann was so good in that middle area and has been so good in those couple of games where he's finally been played in that central role that we see him at Atletico Madrid. And now it's, do we drop Matuidi or do we drop Pogba? And that becomes the question, doesn't it, Eric? Do you drop someone like Pogba who can be that X factor, or do you drop Matuidi who can be? He seems to have grown really into this tournament.
Well, this is a frustrating thing. We had seen earlier in the tournament, Griezmann, for example, being dropped as Deschamps opted for a more defensive system, and I think that perhaps against Germany, I would tend to agree with Sam that Kante should be brought back in. You've got Sissoko on the pitch to help out and track back. So if you have Kante on the pitch, that'll allow Pogba to get involved just that little bit more. And I think that could be the difference against Germany. I mean, let's face it. If they come out with the same front six against Germany, and Germany score quickly, and then they're forced to press even more, they're just going to continue to be opened up without a true defensive midfielder being deployed. And I think that's the risk they're running. That they need someone like Kante who can be that water carrier role and be a shield in front of the defense. I mean, let's face it. The way that Umtiti and Koscielny played, less to be desired, but also the way that those two attack on the pitch, they're not afraid to run with the ball and to get dragged out of position. And I think, with the cunningness of Germany's attackers, I think that without a proper defensive midfielder, you're really leaving the center backs, whoever they are, at a great deal of risk.
And that would be the next point.
Yeah.
Who are the centre backs?
Yeah, and that's the interesting point. Sam, would you be bringing Rami back in, or would you keep him seated there for a bit of consistency?
I mean, it's not no. It's difficult. It's a difficult choice because I'm hardly enamoured with Umtiti or Rami, and I'm definitely not enamoured with Mangala. So I would probably keep Umtiti in just because, even though Rami is obviously more experienced, I feel like he has a real propensity for an error, which lots of club fans have seen. I think he's been on the verge of making a couple of bad errors in this tournament already. He hasn't really been punished by them or punished for them, but I feel like he's been just teetering on the edge several times. And I'd actually just keep him Umtiti in.
It all depends also on who Germany are going to play up front, if they are going to play anyone, because my worry is that Löw has favoured a 4-6-0 formation, so with no forwards for a very long time, because the attacking talent in Germany was not deemed to put a centre forward up there. Now is Gomez out for the tournament, I believe?
Yes, he's out for the tournament.
Yeah.
Does he put Götze or Müller as a false nine, and thus not having someone up front to defend against? And that will so Koscielny and whoever plays, I would also favour Umtiti actually. Would be good for his own experience, and I think he's our next great defensive. He's the next great centre back. Whoever plays there with Koscielny will have to be extra careful with players coming in from deep, because if whoever it is, there's not going to be an out-and-out striker, and that's going to be quite difficult to defend. Saying this, Germany don't really play that well in that system, which is good.
Yeah.
It's a minor positive to take, but finally on France, Eric, the question marks over Giroud really lifted in that game. There's no worry of him against Boateng in this one? No,
I don't think so. I think he's exactly the kind of, if we've got Hummels out, I think he's the kind of player whose physicality and aggressiveness, when he is at the very top of this game, which he seems to be rounding into form at just the right time for France, I think he's exactly the kind of player that can give them problems. I mean, he seems to be exuding confidence. He had a quote talking about how he scored against Neuer before, and he's not worried about doing it now. I think that, we've seen Giroud historically be a very patchy player, very inconsistent, but when he's really riding the crest of a wave, as he seems to be doing now, we see why Arsene Wenger brought him from Montpellier, and why he's been such an effective player at certain points. And I think that this is one of them.
Did anybody else find the second half extremely frustrating for players like Gignac or even Payet when we were in great positions on the counter-attack and just it was a combination of not knowing what to do with the ball and thinking, okay, well, if I mess this up, doesn't really matter because we're 5-1 up.
Gignac I found very easy to guess and easy to read. He does the same. He does the same move.
The same
on the
thing
edge of
all the
box.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, which has been frustrating. I mean, I know he's cracked the bar with one effort earlier in the tournament, which was a lovely strike. But you know exactly what Gignac is going to do when he gets the ball in that position, and it must be easy to read. It is annoying.
Yeah. And
I didn't feel. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel the others having a particularly great time of it either. You know, with what was being. Because we've hardly ever been in that kind of position, being so far up in the game, so early in the game, 4-0 up at half time, and I felt like the players didn't, even maybe Deschamps didn't really see how to manage that kind of lead. They say, oh well, we're 4-0 up, well that's a relief, but what do we do now? And I felt like they didn't really know what to do. Do they attack? Do they don't attack? And it felt with the defense, you know, it didn't. No, the plan was a bit over by half time, and you know, a whole half is quite a long time.
That's the difficulties of being 4-0 up, I believe. So that's a good problem to have. But we'll leave the final word on this game for Iceland, Sam, who've really been a testament to what this tournament has been in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, they've been awesome. It's been a tournament in which, you know, smaller nations and lesser teams, so-called, have been given the opportunity to make an impact, and lots of grumbles about maybe the dilution of quality. And what I would say in that is that, you know, you see teams like Hungary and Iceland really give it a go and get through to the round of 16. That's great. There have been a few teams that have been rewarded for drawing on purpose, like Slovakia, and that was a bit annoying. But teams like Iceland are the reason we watch football. You know, it's the storyline, it's the shock, and the clap they do is absolutely awesome. So they're very welcome.
Yeah, and I think everyone here was just as surprised to see Kolbeinn Sigthorsson score 2 goals. That was about double the amount he scored for Nantes this season, but never mind, it happens in the Euros for some of them. So we'll move on to their opponents on Saturday evening, on Thursday evening, which will be Germany. We've mentioned them briefly and the injuries they may have, but Eric, they didn't really seem convincing against, again, a fabulous Italian side.
Yeah, and again, it should be mentioned too that, you know, this was also an under-strength Italian side. They didn't really they were forced to deploy Parolo in central midfield, and they didn't really have the ability of a Daniele De Rossi or a Thiago Motta to sort of mop up and help protect that 3-man defense. And again, you know, with this 3-man defense getting forward and being able to shackle Italy's strikers, you know, it didn't really look the most fluid attacking performance for Germany. So, you know, as ropey as, and even Ozil's goal, you know, a lovely pass, but, you know, at the same time, you know, he barely gets the ball over the line. I think that, you know, if they are to persist in this system, which looks like is going to be the case, or some variation thereof, maybe Podolski or Schürrle comes in for Draxler or Muller perhaps, but I think it's going to be a very similar approach from Germany, and I think that, you know, without a lack of a physical focal point that they'd had in Gomez, they don't look nearly as dangerous. And so for as much as we agonize and worry about France's defense, I think that Germany's attack is just as toothless and just as lacking.
Yeah, and that's the real worry, isn't it, Sam, that once Gomez went off about 60 minutes in, that Germany seemed to lack any threat going forward against the Italians.
Well, they ended up sticking Draxler up front, which is probably never really the answer. I appreciate tournaments throw up some funny things, and sometimes things can happen in your favour that you didn't expect, but I don't think a Julian Draxler-Thomas Müller strike partnership in which neither of them really wants to get into the box is the answer. And the Germans showed the Italians immense respect in matching their formation, and it was actually, at least for the early stages, the first half an hour, one of the most aggressive games we've seen at the Euros. You saw the way for goal kicks. Each team pushed up and marked man for man, which was great to see after watching a lot of teams pack the edge of their own box and defend for their lives. So it was nice to see that sort of openness. But I mean, Italy, they were not able to string too many attacks together. Pella and Eder were outnumbered 3-2 or 4-2, and Conte had to change formation to get back into the game. I don't know if you know, he went to 3-4-3 after they conceded, and immediately sort of played their way back into proceedings, won a set piece, a penalty. The penalty was fortuitous. Jerome Boateng was being stupid, but they managed to play themselves back into that position. Then they changed back to 3-5-2 immediately after the goal and didn't really create anything else. So, yeah, Germany kind of hauled themselves over the line there with a penalty shootout, but Italy never really stressed them out.
No, I'm still not certain what Jerome Boateng's doing for that penalty. I think he's trying to fly next to.
I think he's trying to say, "I'm not fouling him, ref." Like saying, I haven't pushed him over." And in the process of doing so, it's brilliant.
It's one of the that's modern football in a nutshell, isn't it? It's just telling you all over. But there are issues. We've mentioned them already, Philip, of injury issues. Sami Khedira will be missing out as well, so it'll be likely. People are hammering for the likes of Julian Weigl to maybe deputise or an Emre Can, but it's more likely to be Bastian Schweinsteiger in that midfield. And Hummels is another big miss for the Germans, isn't he?
Yeah, and when you look at the Ukraine games, the only game Hummels did not play. In the first half, Germany were quite poor at the back, and Neuer had to pull out a couple of decent saves. I don't, obviously, I rate Mats Hummels higher than Shukran Mustafi, and it's a big miss for Germany. In midfield, I for probably personal reasons, I would love to see Julian Weigl on the pitch. A lovely little defensive midfielder. 1860 Munich Youth Academy, got bought by Dortmund. Really good player, but that's really purely for personal reasons. And I reckon, Schweinsteiger, if he does play, will be very important. Not by what he does, but the fact that he's on the pitch. I'm of the opinion that Toni Kroos should shall we say, man up and be more vocal on the pitch and probably in the dressing room. But right now, Schweinsteiger seems like the boss, and it's not a particularly good thing that Germany have him on the pitch for France. I mean. And yeah, it's a great boost that they don't have a number 9, like I said before. I don't really, I don't think that Germany have played well without an actual centre forward. So it's a lot of positive. But you know, we always a bit like England, we always lose against the Germans. So it's it's still going to have to be history will have to be made. We remember 82, we remember 86, we remember 2014, and it'll still have to be done, and it's not done yet. I mean, we have weaknesses, they have weaknesses, but it just came out to a header on a free kick 2 years ago, and Germany got through and then won the World Cup. So it's a lot of. Well, that's good for fans. That's good for fans, but fans still need to go out and beat them. And not even sure if I'm looking forward to the game.
I was going to say it doesn't sound like you are, but Eric, that defensive issue without Hummels obviously suspended for the semi-final is a bit of an issue with Mustafi having a couple of worrisome moments in the first game and Howard's playing that more central role against Italy. Which one would you go for to partner Boateng?
I'd go for Jonathan Tah over either of them. Honestly, no. I think that if we look at the way that Bayer Leverkusen finished their season, it was a climb up the table to get back into their habitual Champions League places, and I think that the way that Tah played as part of that to improve what had been a somewhat iffy defense was really impressive. And I know he's young, but if France are willing to give him TT a chance, why can't Leverkusen be giving Tah a similar chance? Or why can't Germany be giving Leverkusen player a similar chance, I should say?
That's a daring shout. Sam, do you think you would go for something like that, or maybe a safer bet like Hoedes?
I think I might be a safer manager in principle. I love Jonathan Tah. He's a great player, but I wouldn't. I think France's TT selection was slightly more forced at this point than Germany's, because Germany, of course, already have Mustafi, who played the first game and scored. They have Hovedes, who I don't actually think is that good by the sort of standards that Germany set by their centre-backs. And His lack of mobility irritates me, and when he plays at right back, he can't really contribute to the build-up play, and it sort of stunts Germany on one side. So generally not that much of a fan of Hovides in this Germany side. I'd play Mustafi, and I'd continue with Kimmich at right back, although Payet versus Kimmich is on paper one of the most one-sided battles you could think of, because Kimmich, while a wonderful player, is fundamentally a holding midfield, played centre-back for Pep, but when you play centre-back for Pep, you play a slightly different role. At right-back, he has looked a little shaky at times. That's the area to go for, I think.
Yeah, it's going forward that many people are focused on Kimmich in that right-back role, but he has been maybe a little suspect at that right-back area defensively, and that's still an area that Germany might have worries, Philip, if, like you say, Payet playing in that kind of area, creating chances, and would it be sensible maybe to play someone like Weigl if Griezmann plays in that attacking midfield role just behind the striker?
Yeah, and but there's a big problem is that you would change the whole setup of the German side if you suddenly put Hovides a centre back at his preferred position. He's not world class. He's not bad. He's not a bad player. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing at Schalke. Even though they haven't been superb last season. But if you do that, you have to put Kimmich at right back because there's no real other option. Then you have to put someone else at on that side of midfield. So yeah, really, I don't. I reckon that Löw doesn't really have a chance to put Weigl on as Schweinsteiger. Vocally, he's so important to the squad. And it would be good if Schweinsteiger would be absolutely knackered doing the what's it called after the 90 minutes extra time. Yeah, extra time in the 30 minutes of extra time. I don't think he has 2 hours of high tempo football in him, and that would be great if he got really tired.
The thing with Weigl and Kroos is they are very similar players in terms of their sort of metronomic quality with passing. So if you're going to play, if Germany go back to 4-2-3-1 and they want to get a little bit of thrust from slightly deeper, if they want a player to propel forward, Schweinsteiger is not what he was, but is still better at that than Weigl, and Emre Can is much better than Weigl at that forward giving game. So Weigl and Kroos are so similar. I wonder if Löw would not be that interested in playing them both at the same time.
It will be an interesting battle for that centre midfield spot, with obviously probably Schweinsteiger coming into that role. But let's have a final word on Italy, Eric, because I will hold my hands up and say, as probably many people did, that I thought Italy would be that disappointment with the side they have, but and they've also highlighted how good of a manager Antonio Conte is down there.
Yeah, I think that we've got a lot to look forward to. I think that obviously the quality that is available to Chelsea and that we've got that will be coming to the Premier League under his auspices is certainly of a higher level. You can buy players as a club manager, but this I think this is really a testament to playing collective football, to being inventive and making the best of what you had, and I think in terms of quality of play, Italy, yes, are out of the tournament, but I think, at the end of the day, are probably going to be looked upon as the second or third best team in the tournament. Provided, depending on who wins. I think that to have a penalty shootout end in that way was just an early disappointment. But through injuries, through suspensions, I think that Italy were much more than the sum of their parts, and that's a huge credit that has to go to Conte. I think that for all the success that Löw has had, I think that Conte is probably in a class apart as a manager in this tournament.
Yeah, and thinking back to the fact that they're even missing the likes of Marco Verratti and Claudio Marchisio in those midfield areas that would have, trying to imagine the kind of Italy side we might have seen if those were fit and available, but they were terrific, and I'll happily eat my words on that one. But it was a fantastic night on Friday evening for some of us at least, as Wales created probably the upset of the tournament as they beat Belgium 3-1. Sam, it was a pretty special night, wasn't it, for that game?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, as an Englishman, I'm a bit conflicted here because having watched the video of the Welsh players celebrating manically at our exit, I sort of start to think, well, I've been really happy for you, so I'm feeling and your tournament, so I've been feeling a bit conflicted about it. But as the storylines go, it's even better than Iceland's, and that takes some beating. And it's my opinion is that if Gareth Bale can haul Wales into this final, and for me there is every chance of that happening. I think it's a near enough a 50-50 game because Portugal have been so poor in parts, and Ronaldo has struggled so much that Bale, if he carries that form into the first half of the Real Madrid season, like he's got that man has a Ballon d'Or coming. He's been that pivotal to such an incredible story and such an incredible upset. It's awesome for Wales.
Yeah, and he's been terrific. Especially it's ever since it's been that last third of the season, and especially that Champions League performance where for the first half he seemed like an unstoppable machine, and he's really carried that on for his career with Wales. And they were especially in that second half, Philip, against Belgium. They were really going for it, and Belgium just didn't have an answer.
It's one of these games where I don't really know if Wales played well, if Belgium were really bad. Obviously, Wales played quite well, but I really thought that Belgium should have reacted to Wales' reaction. Wales equalised on corner. Ashley Williams, a defender I rate, really. I've watched Swansea many times, and Williams many times, and he is a decent centre back. But then you have a game where Belgium did have quite a bit of the ball, but two moments of utter craziness in football terms. We got an unemployed footballer putting three defenders on their bottoms and doing a fantastic finish against a goalkeeper like Thibaut Courtois, who's up there was the finest in the world, and then Sam Vokes with a wonderful header. And I do believe those are fairy tale goals, because I don't see either Howard Upson-Khan or Sam Vokes scoring those every weekend in the English leagues. I believe one of them is playing in the lower leagues, or was playing. Maybe you'll get to play to a higher level after that. And Belgium had no reaction. There was not much in the complete lack of character from the De Bruyne, the Hazards. Actually, I thought Lukaku had a decent enough tournament. So extremely disappointing that this wasn't much more of a contest, because before Wales' third, you didn't feel that Belgium would go back and basically revolt themselves and say, no, we cannot go out of this tournament in such a fashion against Wales. We have to react. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like there was some kind of revolution in their heads, which is the most disappointing, because they have world-class players playing in world-class clubs. I've heard there's been unrest in the squad, in the atmosphere. Some players not really happy with Wilmots, or some players round with others. I mean, I don't know.
It's not surprising, is it? I mean, they haven't looked.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but I actually reckon that this happens in most squads. But I don't know if how much you can put weight on that. But I don't really know who is at fault, or who made a row or anything like that. Because, I mean, we are obviously not in the dressing rooms, but yeah, it doesn't seem so surprising.
Well, I think the players are.
Sorry?
The players are upset at Wilmots for not putting this team together in a way that makes sense. I mean, let's be honest. This team at its best is flowing. It's attacking. It's dynamic. And then Marijuana Fellaini's on the pitch. I hate to be crass, but the way he's deployed these players makes no sense to me. I think that a 4-2-3-1 is the best way to approach, but I think that we've seen with Atletico Madrid this season, Yannick Ferrer-Carrasco, for example, is a fine player. But how is he being used by Diego Simeone, for example? He's being used on the left wing as a change of pace, whereas Wilmot plays him from the first, so his change of pace is not as it doesn't make as much sense. And then when he brings him on, instead of bringing on a natural replacement, the likes of Dries Mertens, for example, maybe Divock Origi, he brings on Fellaini. And again, there's a little bit of rejiggering as to who's where on the pitch, but the fact of the matter is he's got supremely talented players to not only start a match, but to have a change of pace to bring them in, whether that's an Origi or a Ferrer Carrasco or a Batshuayi. to come on and make a difference. He has the ability to deploy this team in a way that they not only start as a strong team, they finish as a strong team. And yes, I know that the injuries and suspensions to the likes of Vermaelen and Vertonghen have been an issue to overcome, but the fact of the matter is, Robson Kanu making people look silly aside, as lovely as Wales were, Belgium had the chances to at the beginning of the match, they looked very, very dangerous. It looked like Nainggolan's goal could be the first of many. But the way that they responded to Wales' equalizer was just to completely lose the plot. And Wilmot started getting desperate. He started totally rolling the dice instead of bringing things back to say, look, we looked threatening in the first third of this match. How do we continue to attack in that manner? But rather than doing that, he just made a bunch of substitutions that just seemed totally arbitrary. I get they were all attacking substitutions as they chased the match, but they didn't seem to be the right use of these players in a tactical situation that gets the best out of them.
There's definite correlation between Belgium looking very poor and Fellaini being on the pitch, and in the first game they were bad when he played. He was brought on in his last game, and they got worse systematically. Everyone loves to hate Fellaini, and he's a very popular Schadenfreude figure. But honestly, in this team, you can see that Fellaini damages the build-up play and damages the flow of the side. There's a very direct correlation, and I agree. The substitutes were done in a sort of scattergun fashion, and it was sort of shades of Roy Hodgson really when he was trying to rescue his own job. When he ends up with 5 strikers on the pitch and Marcus Rashford on the left wing, it was very, very much let's throw these players on and see what happens. It wasn't much in terms of a methodical thought process when making them.
Have you got?
Is he still Belgian manager?
At the moment, I'm not seeing anything for him being sacked, so he's still in the job. But I'm hoping you have a graph of that, Sam, of correlation between Fellaini coming on and Belgium being poor. But I couldn't believe half of them. I mean, we've seen Moussa Dembele for Tottenham be terrific sometimes this season and be an impenetrable force. And he never, I don't think, did he come on at any point? I'm pretty certain he didn't in any game.
He started the second game, didn't he? But he got injured and then didn't come back. But again, he was second choice. He wasn't one of the first 3 central midfielders on that team sheet. I absolutely understand playing Nainggolan because he's fantastic. Witsel is the second in command. That leaves a third spot. There's no way it should go to Fellaini when Dembele is in your squad.
No, and some of the movement seemed strange. One game he brought Benteke on, which didn't make much sense, really. He brings Batshuayi on for 2 minutes and he grabs a goal and thinks about using him again. It seemed frustrating that he couldn't find what sort of a semblance of a team that would work against, to be honest, a Wales side that in that first 20 minutes looked completely shell-shocked, especially after that Regina Nainggolan thunderbolt. They were absolutely uncertain. They were worried. It was ripe for the picking, especially for players like Hazard who thrive in those kind of conditions if they counter and if they allow Wales to come forward, and Lukaku to get in those spaces in behind where he does like to get into. They could have absolutely annihilated them, but they allowed Wales back into the game with the worst piece of marking I've ever seen at a corner for a long while. Who leaves Ashley Williams on their own? It was the freest header. He had the entirety of the stadium to try and head that one. But putting Belgium's poor performances aside for a moment, Philip, what went well for Wales? What worked in that game for them?
I reckon. Well, first of all, there's that marking that you mentioned on the corner, and I think if Wales were shot earlier in the game, I thought Belgium did not really expect that much opposition from the Welsh, and to be honest, neither did I. I didn't expect Wales to be at the races. So at this stage of the competition and be on every challenge, and that unsettled Belgium. Even at 1-1, you could feel that they were probably the more stressed side on the pitch, and that they probably expected after beating Hungary 4-0, bit of the same. And yeah, if the team does lack cohesion and maybe aren't really happy playing together, when you're under a bit of stress, it must be quite difficult, and you could feel that on the pitch, and Wales probably felt that and went for every challenge, did very well with them, and then said, okay, well, if we can do that, we can score 2 goals, and they did.
Wales actually have not been very good for a 90-minute spell. I don't think they've really put together a game yet where they've played very well for an entire game. But they play in patches. They play in 20-minute spells, and the defensive line I think has been really good. So Ben Davies suspended for the semi-final. That's a problem. I think James Chester has actually been really, really good in this tournament. He's really impressed me. And of course you've got Ashley Williams as well. So when you've got a back three as solid and as disciplined as them, and Gunter and Taylor are willing to come back. The work rate to get yourself through those sort of iffy 15-minute spells, Wales are just they've taken the pressure of games on their own shoulders and they've come out the other side. And there have been teams that have wilted under those same circumstances. Wales refused to.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a player there, Sam, in James Chester that's not played that much football in the last 8 months, 9 months at West Brom, and he's really, really played well in that back three with Ashley Williams and Ben Davies. And you mentioned he's missing. Another big player for them missing is Aaron Ramsey for this semi-final. It was a gutting moment, Eric, to see him so upset and knowing that he would miss that likely semi-final. How big of a miss will the Arsenal man be?
Oh, I mean, absolutely fantastic. I mean, I think that, for as much as we've seen, an underdog story, it's down to the balance between work rate and class of Bale and Ramsey. I mean, we both like to think of them as these attacking players who can do fantastic things with the ball at their feet or in terms of their passing, but look at their tackling statistics, look at their average position on the pitch. These are players who are demonstrating not only their talent but their committedness to a team effort. And I think, for me right now, for the tournament to end today, Ramsey will be in my team of the tournament. I think that he's been absolutely fantastic, and we've seen how impressive this player is at his best for Arsenal. And I think now that that he and his teammates are being given a platform upon which to work, he's really being able to make the best of those attributes throughout this tournament. It's really impressive to be reminded, how good of a player he is when he's at full fitness, which has been something that's escaped him in the recent past.
Ramsey again, epitomises that Welsh he fades in and out of games a little bit. I mean, some of his passing has been a bit iffy. He's had 10-minute spells where it hasn't really gone for him. But his production in terms of assists and making it count in the final third it's been almost unmatched. I mean, he's in sort of Dimitri Payet and Gareth Bale areas in terms of on that level in terms of his ability to produce and his ability to garner assists and goals. He's been really, really good, and he's come through some iffy spells in the games. But wow, is he incisive when he needs to be?
Yeah, and that gets tale of the difference between the two blondes in Ramsey and Fellaini, I think, as well. But it will still sound like an absurd question, Philip. Can Wales win it all?
I hope not. I hope they do well against Portugal. I hope they beat Portugal, given the footballs they've played. To be honest, I am a bit pessimistic of their chances against Portugal because of Ramsey, missing, and because maybe of that back four not being the same that it usually is, and Portugal usually being extremely lucky in those circumstances. Even though, well, they sometimes don't win their semi-finals like back in 2000. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we talk about Iceland being a breath of fresh air, and so are Wales. So I think, yeah, well, basically, if you are in the last four, I think you've got every chance of winning it. And once again, I hope not.
Well, I won't try and hide my allegiances anymore. I know I'm only claiming to be a quarter Welsh, but I've never seen my dad prouder of a team put a performance like they did on Friday night. It was really something special, and I'll go and enjoy the game on Wednesday and hope for the best, and fingers crossed that they can get over the line and get to the final, and hopefully that might be one against France. It'd be a real cracker if it is. But they have to get through Portugal first.
I'd much rather face France versus Wales than Portugal, though.
That wouldn't be so much of a surprise because they managed to beat Poland on penalties on Thursday evening. It wasn't hitting the heights of the past again, Sam, but they're in the semis even though they've not won a game yet in 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know how they're doing this. Honestly, it's been quite the effort. I mean, perhaps we should not be so surprised. Their coach is Fernando Santos, who was the Greek coach at the 2014 World Cup, and he produces some very, very solid performances at times, but rarely do his teams win by more than one goal. And I think there is I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it's Santos has not yet lost a competitive game since stepping in or something like that, and they've all of his wins have been by one goal. So he's keeping with his record. Portugal's midfield confuses the hell out of me. I don't know what on earth they're trying to do. I understand that they're trying to play sort of a narrow 4-2-2-2 and compensate for the fact that they don't have any strikers by playing two strikers, which is quite novel. Ronaldo and Nani, I think Nani's been quite a good link player, actually, quietly been their best forward. But Santos has been through 6 or 7 central midfield options. He's got a holder in William, or in this case it will be Danilo because William's suspended. And then the other 3, they just kind of run around a bit. And in the quarter final, Renato Sanchez started left centre midfield, kind of, and then ended up scoring from outside the box on the right. Then he took a switch pass down on the right flank. Then the second half started. He was on the left wing. And you just look at it and you think, what is the plan? And I just feel for the holding midfielder because he looks up to pass the ball forward, and every time everyone's in a different position. It's like they're playing musical chairs. So for me, Wales, very well drilled, very well organised. Yes, they're without Ramsey, but they know exactly what they're doing. This Portuguese midfield mess, it really does play into their hands.
Yeah, and watching Renato Sanchez, he's a wonderfully talented youngster, but he's a bit like a Jack Russell in the middle of a massive field at the moment, running around wherever he can find space. But Eric, we've mentioned their attacking options. They have the likes of probably one of the best strikers and finishers in the world in Cristiano Ronaldo, but they've really struggled to score goals. I mean, they've only scored 6 so far this tournament. What's the issue?
Well, I think it's for as lovely as attacking players like João Moutinho, Quaresma, and João Mario can be, they're not really that tricky and that fast, and the ability to create space, to whip the ball in on a cross or to link play along the ground at the edges of the area isn't there because it's too easy for other center backs and opposing defenders to close these players down. I mean, like I said, João Mario is a lovely player, but at his age, 23, I believe, why he hasn't, earned a move to a bigger club. Bernardo Silva, not in the squad, having had some injury issues with Monaco this season. He's someone I would have liked to have seen. There's creative players available to Portugal, but the way this team is put together, there's just a little bit of slow-footedness, and without that ability to be quick and decisive on the counterattack, with the exception of Sanchez, I would argue, I think there's a bit of sluggishness, and that sort of feeds all the way through the team. I mean, even Carvalho is a fantastic player, but as we've seen, he has a propensity for booking. He's a bit slow-footed. That ability to break at pace, and open up these teams that are being, really defensive and obdurate, is lacking the way this Portuguese midfield's constructed.
Going back to that midfield that both of you already mentioned, and Philip, we've watched João Moutinho a reasonable amount of times for Monaco, and he's just not really clicking in this side. Again, he's not really finding that form that he seems to have struggled with for the past 2 or 3 years now.
Well, is it that surprising given the very apt description that we gave of the Portuguese midfield, the Portuguese organisation? Monaco is extremely organised, and João Moutinho it's quite clear what his instructions are there. I don't believe that it is quite clear what they are for Portugal. So I'm not entirely surprised going forward. That is, I mean, when they don't have the ball, Portugal are not are not that bad. I don't think they have a particularly bad defense. Pepe is a good defender, and yeah, it's one of those midfields you don't really know what everyone is doing, but it seems to be working somehow.
Just about.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest cobbled
Hopefully
together midfield.
it'll crack sooner or later.
But Sam, let's talk about the positives for Portugal. I mean, they've been relatively solid in other than the Hungary game, and they've got interesting fullback options like Rafael Guerreiro to play as well.
Yeah, defensively, correct. Not bad. I think that's quite what a lovely way to put it. They're not that bad.
It is a strange team.
Pepe has had a really good tournament, which is definitely noteworthy. As you point out already, I think he's been really impressive. It's interesting because they started the tournament with some different players in the lineup. Carvalho has been dropped along the way, and Jose Font has come in, who is a really, really good player, and I think he's probably better than Ricky Carvalho now, so that's the right choice. Cedric has come in on the other side for Vieirinha, who is a bit of a liability defensively, although Cedric, in that game, he misjudged the header, didn't he, for Lewandowski's goal in the round of 16 game, and that could have been curtains for him, but he's sort of bounced back and has been better. So, yeah, I mean, again, unsurprisingly, a Fernando Santos team is looking pretty decent in defence. That's, well, it's exactly what you would have expected.
It's almost like that will be written on his gravestone. But I feel sorry for Vieirinha, in all honesty. I can remember when he used to play on the wing, and then everyone decided that there was better wingers than him. So he's almost like the Portuguese Ashley Young. He's turned into a functional right back that doesn't quite understand his role, but will play it if you play him there. But
well, him and Cedric are really similar in that aspect then.
Yes, exactly.
because Cedric has spent the entire season in the Premier League sort of pushing forward, and he's a really good crosser of the ball, and when you play the ball out to him, he maintains the width, and he spearheads the attack from the right side. But Ronald Koeman, he would not trust him defensively last season, and he ended up playing Cuco Martina at right back for the last sort of 10 or so games. And Cuco Martina is not a very good footballer. He scored a wonderful goal against Arsenal with that lovely sort of bending strike that everyone will have seen. And that is about it. Now, he's not great. Cedric is a much better footballer than Cuco Martina, but the fact that Koeman just could not bring himself to trust Cedric, that tells the whole story. And Santos, of course, didn't initially as well. That's why he played Vieirinha. But, hey, he's less trustworthy than Cedric.
Plus, Southampton always score great goals against Arsenal.
Yes, exactly.
Not very logical, but they just do. Let's not forget. So you mentioned the right back. I really want to mention the absentee actually of it was last Wednesday, I think, or maybe Thursday.
Yeah.
It's Rafael Guerreiro, our own Rafael Guerreiro, who plays at Lorient, transferred to Borussia Dortmund, who's had a fine tournament. Is he playing tomorrow?
I think I saw something in one of the Portuguese papers just posted on Twitter that he is fit and ready. So, yep, okay. It's up to Santos to pick, but it looks like he is available.
Yeah, okay. I agree with you, Philip. I think he's been impressive when he has been able to play. I think it was especially in the round of 16 game that he really flew down that left-hand wing sometimes against Croatia, and he just adds that extra dimension that they seem to be missing sometimes. The problem with playing the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Nani up front as orthodox strikers, as we've already said, is that gives you absolutely zero width because the fullbacks aren't pushing, have to absolutely bomb forward in that 4-3-3, an odd orthodox sort of way. They try and play a 4-3-3 that doesn't kind of work. They play Jose Mario somewhere. They play, like we've mentioned, they seem to just cobble players together like it's Sabutio. But let's mention Poland for a minute, Eric. They were probably a little bit unlucky, really, in this one. They got off to a great start, and finally it seemed like Lewandowski arrived as soon as he needed to be shown the back door as well.
Yeah, I think that Poland gave their best, but at the same time, I think I just kind of wonder, given the way that they play, given how high energy their game is, and given that Nawalka hasn't made a whole lot of changes in terms of resting players, rotating players, I think this team's just out on the tiles. They've worked really hard and produced a series of impressive performances, but I think that just fatigue after a long league season is probably caught up to these guys. They're throughout the team, they're all players who work very, very hard. playing total football. Whether it's a Milik or Lewandowski tracking back, or Krakowiak, running all about midfield for Sevilla. I think these are all players who work very hard at club level and national team level, and I think they're just a little bit tired and couldn't reach within themselves to break up that that result against Portugal. I think that and also I think that much like a couple other teams we've seen at this tournament, notably Ireland and Sweden, that for as fine as their starting 11 are, they really don't have a lot of players on the bench that can change a game, and I think we saw that. I'm not saying Kaputska is a great player, but there's really very little in the way of options that Navalka had off the bench, and I think that they might have been undone by that a little bit. That we've seen how important changes have been for most of the teams that are still in the tournament. The introduction of Sanchez to Portugal's lineup, et cetera, and I think that Navalka not having more options to chop and change when necessary was a little bit of a letdown for them.
Yeah, and Sam, it would be a real frustration for someone like Milik, who had plenty of chances, especially with Lewandowski so tied up so often, that he never really hit the ground running like another good striker might have had the chance to.
Yeah, that was a bit grim for Milik, really, wasn't it? I mean, it started with the Northern Ireland game, and he did eventually get the goal, didn't it? It was him, but he missed at least two excellent chances, and that sort of carried on from there, and eventually looked like he just lost his confidence a little bit. His left foot is a fantastic. It's a wonderful weapon, and he can strike a ball really nicely. But just like Lewandowski, is the confidence just kind of drained away as the games went by. That happened to Milik as well. You're right; it was a really good opportunity for him, because when Lewandowski was being triple marked, the ball was falling to Milik. They just needed him to put it in the net, and it didn't happen. I thought him and Lewandowski had some really nice periods of play in that game against Portugal early on, first 20 minutes or so. Nice one-touch football, nice use of space, but they really faded over the course of that game, and in the end were sort of hanging on. And the point made about the lack of substitutions, the lack of depth, is spot on for me. Navalka had no sort of options on the bench, or no one he could trust anyway, and that ultimately played a big part in the downfall.
I reckon they were knackered. All of them. They were just absolutely knackered, just like against Switzerland. They start off all right, but as the second half goes on, they just have no response, because physically it's just too difficult. I'm quite happy that Lewandowski scored his goal, because otherwise it would have been a failed tournament for him. It was a good finish. Milik is not. I haven't watched him closely enough, probably over the course of those 5 Polish games, but he doesn't strike me as a forward who can hit a ball from distance. And he tried that at least 5 times, and I don't believe none of them were on target, or at least dangerous for the Portuguese goalkeeper. So that was a bit disappointing. I like Krychowiak. He was good, shielding the defense, organizing the play. So we know what we're going to have at PSG. And I was extremely impressed with Glick, the centre back, who I believe was really the boss at the back. So Monaco
he's gone to Monaco now, isn't he?
Yeah, and Monaco are getting a very, very good defender. Not that they don't have any already, but it's a great team, and it's a great shame that they got knocked out. But someone had to lose, that's penalties.
Yeah, it is a shame, but at least we get to look forward to the likes of Krakowiak returning to Liga, and like we already mentioned, Glick is pretty much on his way to Monaco as well. It'll be exciting to see those in the French division next season. Just before we go, I'm gonna put you all on the spot here, as this is our last podcast before the final. Our final podcast will come out after the final has been completed. So I am gonna get your predictions on who will win it. I'll start with you, Eric. Who do you think wins it?
I think France beats Portugal in the final.
Interesting one, Philip.
Same.
And Sam, what are you going for?
Sorry, Germany win.
That's perfect. And I will try and split the hairs and try and do the risky one again, and I say Wales over France in the final. But that's maybe my heart talking instead of my head, but never mind. That's all we have for this week. My thanks for Sam and to Eric and to Philip for joining me. Thank you all for listening at home, and get comfy. These final 3 games are going to be something maybe a little bit special. A bientôt and farewell.